Okay, morning everyone. I think we're going to crack on now. So thanks everyone for joining. So my name is Andrew Butler from Microsoft, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Enterprise Mobility Suite and some of the new innovations that we've got coming through with the suite, amongst other things. So we'll kind of crack on now. I'm obviously here today with TIG. To talk about some of the stuff that we can do, and obviously hopefully you can follow up with them if there's anything that interests you, and you can obviously I've got my contact details, my Twitter handle there, and I'll have an email address at the end as well. So as we talk about mobility, as a trend in the industry, we've seen some massive changes in the way that people work, people wanting to use different devices, access different forms of applications, whether they're in the office or on the go, to obviously be more productive. And the influx of new cloud technologies has really changed that. But with that new kind of mobility approach, there comes some serious security challenges. When we look at some of them on the screen here, it's that IT wants to have visibility and control in the cloud. People are being attacked consistently, targeted by hackers with advanced hacking techniques, etc. Your network perimeter is beginning to vanish because no longer is everyone sat inside one single office with managed devices. Actually, everyone's out and about on their mobile phones, their tablets, etc. So there's some big security challenges that we face there. And that problem is increasingly complex. We're seeing an increased potential loss of data and actually losing control of that data. So again, that's not necessarily just end users having more kind of power and control as to where they put that data, but obviously when you share documents out with partners and customers, that document is essentially leaving your network, and you kind of lose control of what's going to happen to that. So we obviously want to build solutions in that kind of protect that. We're seeing more and more people using non-approved software as a service applications. This really stems, I think, from a desire to be more productive. There are some fantastically cheap, if not free, tools out there. We often see in different organizations small pockets of Salesforce, potential Power BI implementations, or even people, the marketing team using Facebook and Twitter. And as a result, potentially people are having multiple different passwords, different username credentials, and there's a real possibility that those credentials will be exploited. People will forget passwords, or they'll use simpler passwords. And there's a real chance that hackers can get in by targeting individuals, which is obviously a big security risk. And naturally, the whole mobility, multiple devices thing is a massive trend as well. People wanting to bring their own devices into work often because they're better than the ones that they're being given at work. But also they feel a bit more comfortable. They can actually get, you can potentially get more work out of people. They can access their email from anywhere, and they can be more productive on the go and on any device. Which is obviously something that we want to start pushing and enabling, also to help reduce costs back to the business. So in terms of what's driving that change, we kind of see two key scenarios. One was the life before cloud, and I think it's a pretty reasonable visualization to all of how we kind of initially have individual offices with rooms of servers, network connections, PCs kind of plugged into the wall, and everyone kind of sits there, and that's what they do. Your data sits there, it never really leaves. Those devices don't leave. People log off in the evening, they log on back in the morning when they get in, and they don't traditionally get any other form of information. BlackBerry as a mobility solution years ago was really the mainstay of enterprise mobility, simply because you could give people access to their email on a mobile device. And actually mobility now is significantly more than that. People want to be able to access multiple applications, multiple data sources, be able to actually do things on the go. And as we can see here, the life with cloud, it becomes far more agile, but also opens up a huge world of security challenges to an enterprise and an organization, and also to the end users. And we can see there, we want people to be able to choose applications, access resources from wherever they are, but the issue is that IT seems to have limited visibility and protection. Well, that's some of the stuff that we'll go in and cover today. So the kind of questions that we need to answer as IT, delivering back to the business, things around access control. How do you ensure that people are accessing appropriate cloud applications? Threat prevention. How do I know if my users have been breached? That's obviously a crucial thing when we think about network activity, people coming into your business. How do you know if people's activity is right compared to other people? So we can start to identify those threats early. Preventing data leakage is obviously a massive thing. understanding which applications are actually used in your environment outside of the ones that you kind of dictate that users should be using, and obviously then gaining that visibility over applications and usage. And that's a massive thing that we're going to touch on today, with some new innovation coming from Microsoft through one of our acquisitions. So in terms of a comprehensive solution, Microsoft has a clear vision of how we see the world of mobility, and it really falls into four kind of buckets, if you will. And the first one is the users, and actually everything mobility, everything cloud really does come down to a user and identity level. And this is kind of where we'll spend a bulk of the time today, talking about obviously what's important here. Those, if you think about one individual user, they'll be using a number of devices. It could be a mobile phone, tablet, dedicated laptop, and then some personal devices as well. And on those couple of devices, there's going to be a multitude of applications. So potentially the office applications, CRM, ERP apps, as well as other personal applications they'll want to be using. And then obviously there's going to be a huge ton of data there. So within those office apps, you'll have multiple PowerPoint presentations, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, many of those that will potentially contain confidential data, which is obviously a massive issue, because if you're then going to enable those devices and applications to be outside of the business and outside of that perimeter, we need to ensure that there's going to be adequate security at a file level. And actually Microsoft and the Enterprise Mobility Suite really does offer that left to right view from a mobility and security lockdown perspective of securing the users, their identities, their credentials, and their access to applications, the devices that they're using, and ensuring there's appropriate policies on those devices. Again, managing data at an application level, and then obviously at a file level as well. And there's a couple of key things that we really want to look at here, and that's kind of looking at that identity-driven security, managing that mobile productivity. And one thing that you'll probably hear me mention a couple of times on this webinar is actually Enterprise Mobility Suite being your catalyst at moving to the cloud. We see a lot of organizations wanting to move to cloud. They want to see the cost benefits, the scalability, but actually they're not quite sure how they get there. And actually, whether your cloud strategy is Microsoft or not, the Enterprise Mobility Suite and building an appropriate hybrid identity model is absolutely crucial to getting there, especially if you want to move to a more software as a service application delivery model. So in short, this is what the Enterprise Mobility Suite consists of. There's four key products which you'll see on the left-hand side with under the kind of the green banner of Enterprise Mobility. And we'll start off with Azure Active Directory, which is actually Azure Active Directory Premium in this case, and that really sits in the identity and access management bucket. That's what we're going to talk about first today. Looking at how we can manage a hybrid identity model, how we can do that very, very simply, and also then extend out access to applications using single sign-on amongst other things. We'll look at advanced threat analytics, which is all about user and entity behavioral analytics. So that came from an acquisition that we made early last year, has been brought into the Enterprise Mobility Suite, and is actually an on-premises solution that will help monitor Active Directory traffic and SIM traffic, to help provide better insights into if there's kind of things going on in your network that you're not quite sure about. Looking at Intune is kind of, and Intune was an interesting one because it was the first real driver that we had into the enterprise mobility market, competing with the likes of Mobile Iron and AirWatch from a mobile device management perspective. And actually that's developed now as an app management solution as well, and we'll cover that off around holding those devices and applications together and setting those policies. And then obviously information protection with Azure Rights Management, so really kind of looking to set policies at a file level to protect that. And at the end of the presentation, we've kind of got a couple of topics that we'll touch on around stuff that's coming, but also some new stuff. And Cloud App Security was actually went general availability last Wednesday, so a very, very new product. We'll touch on that later, but that's really our cloud access security broker, which is a fantastic new piece of technology that will both complement the Enterprise Mobility Suite, anything you are doing with software as a service applications in your business, but also through through Office 365 and other things that you'll be using there. And as we look to visualize that, you can really see how the things start to play together. So right down at the bottom, we're looking at advanced threat analytics to really secure the perimeter of everything on-prem. So everything you've traditionally done with Active Directory, accessing file shares, resources, corporate applications that could be on-premise web applications, that's a really important point, and we really want to understand what's going on in that. Can we start to profile normal behavior versus abnormal behavior, and we can protect that thing that we've all been protecting for a long time, which is the on-premises infrastructure. We then start to extend that out into the public cloud, and we can see in the kind of the top left hand corner what we're doing with Azure Active Directory, building that hybrid identity model, and therefore taking that same single sign-on approach that we've had previously with kind of on-premise applications, and then delivering single sign-on with the same credentials to those SaaS applications as well. Looking at rights management kind of in the middle, and that it kind of sits around everything. It's sitting at a file level, and we're looking to kind of set those policies and make sure that people are implementing that, and protecting that data on a consistent basis. And then Intune is kind of really there to manage all of those devices in your organization, predominantly focused at mobile devices that will probably be more outside of the business and outside of that original perimeter. But there is functionality in Intune to manage Windows 10 fully and those desktop PCs, as well as desktop Macs, etc. So that's kind of what we kind of look at as the overall suite, and hopefully this will all become a little bit clearer as we go through. So the first point really is to say that identity is the core of enterprise mobility. So we take this first instance on the left-hand side. We've had for a long period of time, Active Directory is the mainstay identity solution for the majority of businesses. 94% of the Fortune 500, use Active Directory, and it's been around for a number of years now. And we've spent a lot of time as businesses building that up, trying to make it as efficient as possible. Developing single sign-on to on-premise web applications, and really kind of creating a strong directory and a strong kind of footprint for users in their in their environment. But on the far right hand side, we suddenly have a whole new form of IT products and services that we're looking after now. So it's no longer just putting standard web applications in. We want to go and look at the likes of Office 365 from a productivity perspective, look at Azure for maybe infrastructure as a service, but also platforms as a service, things like SharePoint and SQL, and obviously other non-Microsoft applications, other third-party tools, the likes of Google, the likes of Salesforce, Box, etc. So lots of different technologies out there that we can start to leverage, but actually we need to build a very, very simple connection in between the two, which is where Azure Active Directory sits in the middle. And we use a very, very simple connection tool called AD Connect. And we essentially take everything that's there in Active Directory on-prem, and we then kind of replicate that into Azure Active Directory to build that cloud-ready identity model. Naturally, that does require an element of remediation work to be done on premises. There's very few customers I've ever spoken to who can confidently claim that their Active Directory is in an extremely fit state. So obviously we are looking at that as something to build in that total model, enabling the likes of user write back, password write back, so that you can maintain that consistency on premises as well as in the cloud. But it also then makes it very, very simple to enable single sign-on to all of these applications. So anyone on the call that's potentially already on Office 365 and isn't using this type of scenario, the strategy you would have probably taken is to take your Active Directory and then do a direct synchronization connection into Office 365, where you essentially lift and shift those user credentials and kind of drop them in Office 365 to kind of provide you with that 365 identity model. Now that doesn't really provide the consistency, that synchronization of back and forth, on a consistent basis. It also becomes very, very difficult when you're then going to extend out to different, SaaS applications. So you may start with Office 365, then look at Salesforce or CRM, etc., and you have to do the whole process again. Makes it very, very difficult. So if we can build in this one consistent model where you'll have all of your cloud identities in one place, it becomes very, very simple to add all of these applications in. It reduces significant overhead to the business and to IT, but it also should reduce the amount of kind of help desk requests, etc., as we start to deliver a better self-service request model. Things like self-service password reset, which is actually probably one of the biggest return on investment factors when it comes to the enterprise mobility suite. And they reckon that it can cost a business anywhere between £25 and £50 per reset when you've got someone that's sitting on the help desk answering those calls, and naturally that depends on the size of your organization. But obviously it's a massive cost that you can start to mitigate by delivering that self-service platform and opportunity through Azure Active Directory Premium. And this is really where we kind of see this current reality to really, drive it home. As you can see at the bottom, this is kind of where we are today. You have your on-premises infrastructure, a number of managed domain joined devices, which are all kind of tied into Active Directory, which is obviously built on Windows Server. You then start to see the introduction of more mobile devices, ones that are potentially unmanaged and want to access not only applications that you've already had access to, but those new applications, the likes of Salesforce, Box, SAP, Dynamics, etc. And actually, people will be using different logon credentials. It all gets a bit messy, and as you can see there, a number of different connections from different devices into the same or different services, where IT probably don't have the visibility of those applications, and even if they do, it's becoming increasingly difficult to manage those user credentials, and therefore you're obviously at risk of those credentials being hacked or compromised. And actually, when we look at the scalability of Azure Active Directory, I think it really mirrors the scalability of Microsoft Cloud in general. And actually, when we look at some of these figures, they are quite standing. Since the release of the service, we've had pretty much over 1 trillion Azure AD authentications, obviously backed up by the fact that we get more than 1.3 billion authentications on Azure AD every single day. Now, that we have to take into consideration that obviously Office 365 is built on Azure AD, but I think it just shows the sheer scale of how this is being used. We have a huge number of third-party applications that are actually leveraging AD for authentication. Loads of applications. I think roughly 2,500 software as a service applications that we're natively integrated for single sign-on with. Hundreds of millions of accounts on Azure AD. So the scale of the platform is absolutely massive. Naturally, the information is obviously owned and used by the controlling organization, not by Microsoft. But it's a born in the cloud directory that we can essentially say we've built Active Directory on premises, and that's obviously the mainstay of identity. And therefore, to be able to replicate that up into the cloud, it gives people that consistent experience they've been looking for, that consistency in terms of synchronization of data and information, which is obviously really, really important nowadays. And as we look at certain scenarios of where Azure Active Directory becomes extremely important, we see, as we've spoken about the first one already, it's we have thousands of applications out there, and your organization probably won't be using thousands, but there is a huge variety out there, and you can pick and choose what you want your users to be using, and therefore give them that one single identity to get access to all of those things and maintain that privacy and security. Hopefully make the lives of everyone easier. So rather than having to remember all those passwords, you can go to a single cloud portal where you can access all of your cloud applications as well as the applications that you've got on premises. Helping to collaborate with partners and connecting with consumers are two things that we'll touch on around future roadmap stuff. And obviously that identity-driven security, which is obviously a massive piece of what we're looking to do. Now, conditional access is one of those key elements of functionality that kind of sits between Azure Active Directory and Intune. And as the title kind of says, it's really about enabling access to services as long as a set of conditions are fulfilled. And often when we look on the left-hand side, these are the type of conditions that we would be looking at. In a traditional mobile device management scenario with mobile devices, for example, iOS or Android, you'd probably be looking to say, well, is this device jailbroken? And if it is, then naturally, you can't get access to our corporate resources. But obviously, if it's not, and most of them won't be, that's a tick in the box. And then potentially, we'd be looking at whether the device is enrolled in MDM, and actually, you could say, well, we want our only managed devices, to be accessing, corporate resources, the likes of Exchange and SharePoint data, for example. And then we can obviously allow that. We can enforce multi-factor authentication at an application level as well as a user level, which is obviously extremely important. So conditional access, and we have a quick demo of conditional access later on in the webinar, but it's a fantastic process, which is that functionality is extending to on-premises stuff, and the roadmap is to keep developing conditional access as a key kind of component of the enterprise mobility suite moving forwards. So when we talk about single sign-on, I want to just quickly run this video which will show just how simple it can be to enable single sign-on to one of our applications. So here what you can see is our list of applications that we currently have access to, the likes of 365, etc. We want to then add a new application, so we'll go to the gallery. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's over 2,500 applications. I'm going to search for Twitter. That's the one that we want to have access to, and I'll just type in Corp Twitter. Just to enable our marketing team to all have single sign-on access to the corporate Twitter account. But importantly, we want to make sure that those users don't actually know the password to the Twitter account. Naturally, Twitter is a thing where it can cause a lot of brand damage to organizations if people go loose once they've left the organization, they know the password, etc. So with this, we can essentially go and assign accounts. So I'm going in, and I know under my security groups, I'm going to search for security groups and sales and marketing. So I want to give all of these people access to that. Very, very simply, you go down and click assign. And as a result, we'll go in here and say we want to enter those corporate Twitter credentials. So we'll put the username in, so the Twitter handle, which in this case is ABEMS Demo 1, and then we'll put in the password. So as you can see, it's totally kind of hashed out. The users won't know what this password is. Now here's a little box called Enabling Password Rollover, and if we were to select that, we could essentially say that Azure Active Directory is going to go back into Twitter with those credentials on a timeline of your choosing, most likely up to like 16 weeks, 3 to 4 months, etc. And actually you can then go in and it will change the password for you. So actually the administrator won't know the password. You then kind of secure that by changing it with the Forgot My Password tool through Twitter directly. What we're really showing here is that actually you can then enable, and that was done in less than a minute. What you could then do is, as one of those users, go into your single sign-on My Apps portal and have access to Twitter. You won't see that password, but you'll immediately go straight to the Twitter page. Obviously, a huge opportunity and very, very quick and simple to provision applications. And as we can see, I have about 100 users in this Azure Active Directory demo environment, so it's very, very simple to then take those groups, add in different applications. You'll see Salesforce there on the list, and actually through a developer account, etc., we were able to set up single sign-on to Salesforce in approximately 20 minutes at a very, very basic level. So because we have that identity set up immediately, it's simply down to provisioning the URLs, getting the security tokens, etc., to enable this, but fundamentally it's extremely easy to get going with. So that's kind of Azure Active Directory in a nutshell, and actually you kind of want to touch on now enterprise mobility management with Intune. So there's 3 core elements that I would say is part of Intune that really it delivers as a service, and it's really about connecting the users to IT. There is a bit of a disconnect there often around devices, what are they allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, and I think Intune's a great way that we can start to set those policies and give people freedom, but also within an environment that's kind of conducive to being secure. So there's 3 key points here. One of them is mobile device management. So Intune as a product was initially developed around mobile device management. We've always, we have System Center Configuration Manager to manage the patching and OS updates for client PCs. So Intune really came to sit in as a mobile device management tool, really going across the 3 major operating systems in iOS, Android, and Windows. BlackBerry isn't provided for multiple reasons, but that's really where we're looking at focusing on those from a device, from a mobile phone and tablet perspective. But actually, there's been a huge number of innovations to the technology into Intune, which also enables PC management. A lot of that is aided by the innovations in Windows 10, and actually the consistent operating system in Windows 10 really enables the control of certain policies across Windows. Having the same operating system across phone, tablet, PC makes it significantly easier to set those policies and obtain enterprise-wide consistency. And that also kind of applies for Mac OS X as well. You won't have the same level of functionality between, say, System Center and Intune, when it comes to Mac control, but obviously there's a service description online where you can start to make a judgment call as to how you would prefer to deploy that. And actually the piece in the middle is extremely important, and actually as the service has developed, we've recognized that it's all well and good setting device-wide policies, configuring VPN profiles, Wi-Fi profiles, whether or not you can cut and paste or screenshot a device. But actually, I think we've kind of realized that if an end user is using Facebook or Twitter or Netflix in their own personal lives, IT doesn't really need to have any control over those applications. Let your users use those as they wish, as long as it's not accessing any corporate data. So the crucial part is that we kind of recognize, well, where are users actually accessing corporate data from? And at the above is just a couple of examples. So we kind of see from a Microsoft perspective, those users that are using Office 365, probably one of the reasons you've gone for Office 365 is to enable, the use of Office on multiple devices. We obviously launched Office for iPads, the last couple of years, same for Android, and those applications have been developing. So what we're really looking to do here is really to say, okay, if we can set policies at an application level where we know that these are the only applications through which end users are going to actually consume corporate data, as long as that's protected, we can kind of we can go from there, and we can stretch that out, and we can also enable people to use those personal applications knowing that they're in an environment where that corporate data is safe. And when we think about this comprehensive lifecycle management, you can kind of see where Intune kind of starts and finishes. So starting off really around the enrollment piece, so providing that self-service approach again through the company portal where users can go and enroll devices. This makes it very easy from a bring your own device scenario. And I'd point out that Intune is a fantastic tool for enabling bring your own device, but obviously Intune can also be used for a corporate owned device policy whereby you're providing X number of Android handsets, Windows Phone handsets, iPads, etc. out to your end users. You might want to use tools like, for example, you can bulk enroll devices through the Apple configuration services, etc., or you can do it manually, or set up those policies through System Center, etc. But so there's two approaches. You can enable the self-service for people who say, well, I want to use my personal iPhone to access work emails, so I'll just I'll download the company portal application and I'll have my device managed. And then of course you can have those and say, well, we have corporate devices that we want to lock down, and this can be a kind of a replacement for those services and kind of play the role that Bez played for a number of years with BlackBerry. Once you've kind of started that enrollment process, you can start to provision that kind of corporate persona on that device. A lot of that will come down simply to deploying relevant certificates, email profiles, VPN and Wi-Fi profiles, deploying those relevant device security policies, but also installing mandatory apps. So, again, if you want to help encourage people to get their personal devices enrolled, if you have intellectual property, great line of business applications that you want people to be using throughout their working day, having those as mandatory applications and actually saying you can only access those by going through the company portal is a great way to get people up enrolled into MDM, as well as those conditional access policies, which really comes into that manage and protection piece. So that's where we can kind of restrict access to corporate resources if the policies are violated, or if the device simply isn't enrolled into MDM, and we can naturally then start to manage those devices through their life cycle, start to report on both the device and the application compliance levels, and see if there's any policy conflicts, etc. Then down to retiring the device. So naturally with a bring your own device scenario, if I bring my personal iPhone into work, I then leave the organization. Actually, what I really want is to be able to say to the IT will remove the corporate footprint from my device, but leave my personal applications in, in like now, all sorts. It could be things, could be mobile games that you've been playing on, could be, personal local documents, photos that you've saved. Now, majority of the time you're using cloud applications, so that data is secure anyway. But actually, we can kind of use this, as a way to ensure that there's this nice relationship between IT and the end user, where we can do selective wipes if the device is lost. You just know the corporate data is safe, and IT has control over that, whilst the user can maintain control over other elements, of their own mobile devices. Now, one of the big differentiated value propositions that sits within Intune is the deployment flexibility. So Intune is a standalone cloud service. It's a web browser console where you can start to manage those devices, and you can have Intune as a standalone solution. But what a number of customers are interested in doing is really kind of integrating that into Configuration Manager. So those of you who are using System Center Config Manager, Intune is often chosen as the kind of best of breed mobile device management tool to go alongside that, simply because of this integration. And it provides you with that single pane of glass view of all of the devices within your organization. It would then sit inside the System Center console, potentially making it easier for people to manage all of those devices. It could be that in your organization you have a set individual who looks after kind of desktop OS patching and deployments, etc. And actually you want to extend that role and functionality into mobile device provisioning. So in that scenario, it'd be nice to have that tool within the same console that they're familiar with using. And in some larger organizations, actually arguably there's more mobile devices than there are potentially domain join managed devices. You might have, say, one domain join laptop per person, but then each individual might have a tablet and a mobile phone, which then obviously doubles the amount of mobile devices that you're having to manage as opposed to corporate devices. So it could be that actually you prefer to have one individual that does it via Intune as a standalone service, and then leave OS deployment, patching, etc. through Config Manager to a different individual with their own console. One key thing to consider when looking at this approach is this is an important slide when it comes to, if we want to deploy Intune, what strategy are we going to take? Because actually, once you've done an integration or chosen not to do an integration, with Configuration Manager, you then kind of set with that decision. So if you decide to integrate it, very, very difficult, nigh impossible to rip the two apart. You'll have to kind of start from scratch with Intune, which not many people want to do, and vice versa. If you already have a configured Intune tenant, you can't then bring that back into System Center. So very, very important to consider, some of those points as to what people are going to require, etc. And actually, one of those factors is that there is a feature gap, and naturally that's because Intune as a cloud service has had a huge rapid cadence of updates in the couple of years it's been in market. We did come from behind with the likes of Mobile Iron and AirWatch being fully established MDM providers, so we had to work very, very quickly. And actually, if you go onto the TechNet articles online, there's a nice blog which is what's new in Intune, and you can see every single month there's new functionality coming in via new policies, new application management policies that are available. And that's obviously really, really important. Now, some of those things come later to Configuration Manager, and that's simply because of the way the Configuration Manager is architected and the way that it gets updates. With the whole System Center vNext strategy, there are going to be more, there'll be a quicker cycle of updates for Configuration Manager naturally, because it has to cope with the new kind of Windows 10 as a service model as well. But something to consider. Now, we've kind of spoken about that device policy and managing that device at that wide level, but we kind of now want to talk about mobile application management policies. So Microsoft has a very clear strategy and vision when it comes to application management, and that's to build in a multi-identity policy within our own applications. So the Office applications, we're saying, well, actually, if people have got personal Office 365 accounts and therefore they're using their Word for personal use, but they also have a corporate Office 365 account, those two should live side by side, but they should never have to interfere with each other. So as an example, if we kind of go through here to this next one, it will kind of show it in a bit more detail. So if you receive an email attachment to your corporate email through the Outlook client, you can copy into Excel in the corporate space, because it's a managed application. You recognize that is the case. However, what you cannot do is paste then to a personal application, because it recognizes the application in Excel recognizes that as a managed application that's holding corporate data, that can't leak out into other personal applications. So the same goes that I can then paste that information into the corporate version of Word, just not the personal version of Word. And again, even though I've switched applications again, I still can't save that document to a personal storage location, because it still recognizes that we have corporate information there. But what I can do is save that to my OneDrive for Business. So you can see that it's the same application, just different identity policies within that OneDrive application, which is obviously really, really important. Now, for a long period of time, this application management piece, the prerequisite to do that was that the device was enrolled in Intune. Now, as of November, we kind of launched new functionality which said that actually you can manage mobile productivity without the device enrollment. So we can still set those application management policies at an app level without requiring the device to be enrolled in Intune. And this is important for a couple of reasons. There's two main scenarios that we really see here. Now, one of them is bridging this gap between the user and IT, in the sense that when it comes to bring your own device, the end user are often saying, well, listen, all I care about is that you're managing the corporate data. I don't necessarily want you to have full control over absolutely everything I do. I don't want you to disable copy and paste at a device level, because I'm often pasting things to my friends in different WhatsApp, etc. I don't want that user experience to be compromised. And actually, when we look back to the likes of BlackBerry and Good from an application management containerization perspective, a lot of the time the feedback from end users is that it's very, very clunky. It can often impact other things on the device. So we're really looking to make this a really smooth and seamless experience for everyone. So that's one kind of key area there to really help encourage bring your own device. But actually the second one is if you've got business partners, consultants, etc., that are coming into your organization doing work with you or for you, and they're bringing their own devices, could be a tablet or a mobile phone, but you want to provision access to, say, an Office 365 license for them for, say, an extended period of time. That device might already be managed by an MDM provider, so it could be managed by, even managed by Intune, could be managed by Mobile Iron or AirWatch. But obviously, you can't have two mobile device management profile sitting on one device. So being able to say to say a third-party user that's coming into your organization and requiring access to those applications, we'll manage the application, but you can therefore maintain those policies at a device level that your organization has kind of set for you. And from an app partner perspective as to how we're building this, really looking at the Office suite as kind of a best of breed, extending that out into our other applications like the CRM and Power BI. Naturally, in order to actually enable application management policies, we need access to the source code. So this is the reason why we're partnering with a lot of people. We can't just take random applications out of the store and start to enable these policies because we don't have access to the developer source code. So the likes of Box, Adobe, SAP are all coming forward and kind of wrapping their policies around. I think Adobe PDF Reader actually launched for iOS at late March, so that we can see that these are coming through very, very quickly. And actually, if you've got your own line of business applications, or you work with third-party software development houses who are building iOS or Android applications for you, to go onto those corporate-owned devices, you can still use the Intune app wrapping software development kit to build those app policies into your own corporate apps. So as well, you can kind of set it where you can't copy and paste corporate data out of that application into, say, a personal note or a personal email, etc., etc. So here's just a very, very quick, again, we'll look at some quick things to show. Just number one, conditional access, and then a mobile application management policy. So in this one here, we're going to look at an unmanaged iPhone device, and we're going to go into Outlook and attempt to provision email, my corporate email there, and you'll see here that it's going to require me to go to the Intune portal. So we'll see here as we start to put the incredibly secure password into the Office 365 portal. It's going to then take us out once we've signed in, and you'll see there it says your organization needs to increase your security. So your device has to be managed by your organization to enable you to do that. It will then simply take me out to the web browser, to the company portal, and I can either install that application or go via a web browser. So that's a very quick indication of what conditional access looks like. And then we're going to show you here very quickly some mobile application management policies. So we have a document here within Word. So I'm going to try and duplicate this to my personal Dropbox, and I'll press duplicate, and as you can see, it doesn't enable saving to a personal location. Now as we're going to take a snippet of data as well. So we'll take a chunk of this text here, and we're going to copy that. And we'll then go into a third-party application, so in this example, Notes, and we'll try and paste it in there. Now what you'll see is that the paste option will still come up as an option, but actually it's grayed out. So I can press it as much as I want, but it's not going to paste the data anywhere. Now different applications will show this in a different way. You might just never see the paste option. The paste option may be grayed out, but fundamentally the device knows that's corporate data that's kind of protected, and actually only I think it's to a slightly techie level that data is encrypted, and actually only the application management policy actually enables that application to decrypt that data to actually then push it forward. So great stuff that we're seeing there, really helpful from a data loss prevention perspective. And for those of you who are kind of wondering, well, you've spoken a lot about iOS and you've spoken a lot about Android, what about Windows? Then I think the next version of Windows will be quite exciting for you. So enterprise data protection is our kind of the Windows way of working around data loss prevention and kind of application security. So that's going to come across the devices, and naturally with Windows 10 being that consistent operating system across devices, you'll start to see that there. So you can start to dictate whether all documents created on those devices are corporate documents and therefore are kind of applied to the same sort of policies, and then protecting the loss of data outside of those applications. So exciting stuff that's coming across the Windows ecosystem as well. And the next thing we'll kind of touch on very, very briefly actually is Azure Rights Management Services. So I think the real key part to play that Azure Rights Management Services has is protecting those files at the file level. And this diagram really just goes to show that you can very easily, or have been able to easily, protect data initially when you're in your own premises, on your own network, etc. Suddenly you've got more mobile devices that are going out and about, so you start to lose a bit more control of the data, even though they're on managed devices. But actually, there's great scenarios such as if you're sharing, as a customer, you're sharing an RFP document with certain vendors or partners. You potentially want that document to only be seen by certain individuals. You want that document to be time bombed for say 2 weeks, and there's a certain process and time they have to respond to it. So you want to kind of really build in kind of granular, detailed policies around those documents. And rights management really does enable you to do that. And it's really around 4 key principles, which is protecting any file, so not just Office documents, but PDFs, CAD drawings, etc. Sharing those with any person, so that sharing those documents out with whichever stakeholders need to access them. Viewing them on any device, so we have RMS sharing. Applications for Android and for iOS, which helps to decrypt the keys of the data that's obviously being sent, and then obviously being able to track and manage that from the cloud. So key examples here of saying, well, I want to immediately revoke access to a document. I've realized that I've potentially accidentally shared something that's confidential. You can set a policy where you can immediately revoke access to that. The way that you get around doing that is you essentially enforce that the recipient has to be online to access that document. They can't save it locally or anything. They have to be able to connect to the internet, so that you can immediately send that policy through to retract that information. Now, the key thing about rights management, which I really want to touch on the most, is how difficult it is to deploy. Not from a technical perspective, because actually really in Office 365, etc., you can just turn it on. But it's really around that cultural aspect of actually getting people to encrypt their data and their documents at a file level every time, and their emails. I don't think there's many people. I actually did an event the other week where I asked this question, and one person did put their hand up, and it turns out that she works for the Ministry of Defence, so they obviously have to. But not many businesses will go and assign rights management to every email that they send, assign rights management to every document that they create. And actually, when we think about some of the big data leakages that have happened, a lot of them wouldn't have happened, or at least culpability would be much easier to identify by using rights management. You can attach cover documents with watermarks of the individual's email address, so you kind of know who's sharing things, etc., etc. But I think the key thing is to try and build in change management policies, programs internally as an organization to get people using this stuff. And I think that really starts with IT. So IT controlling, and developing specific DLP protection policies, putting those in Exchange Online. People then start to experience RMS protected data, but they don't actually initiate that protection. It's just that they're seeing an email that simply says you do not reply all, or you're not able to forward this, or you can't print this document, etc. And then I think you can start to teach a critical few users who are initiating, say, B2B sharing protected. So it might be vendor managers, SAP reporting, could be a CFO with a really important financial data, and saying, listen, when these sales excellence reports come out, they need to be encrypted and protected. And then it's just about enabling that broader RMS where people can actually initiate it themselves. So, at Microsoft, we have set policies where I can go in and say, I can send an important email to a few of my colleagues where they actually can't print, they can't copy it, they can't respond, they can't do anything. It's more just kind of they can't reply all. And actually, there are some other little ways you can use rights management. So I've known of customers where management actually, those of you that are managers and potentially send out documents to your team in preparation ahead of a team meeting, and you're kind of hoping that everyone's read it and you're kind of trusting them that they have. Actually, with rights management, you can track the usage of data, so you could send a document that's rights management protected to, say, 10 team members, and come the team meeting, you can actually see whether or not any of them have actually opened it, when they've opened it. So if they've opened it 5 minutes before, you can actually see that now. That's not necessarily the type of behavior that you want to drive, but there are ways that you can use it to increase productivity and be really, really effective. But I just want to kind of really highlight that difficulty in getting it going. Technically, absolutely fine, and actually I think this is where, through Office 365, etc., and that change management profile that you potentially build into the business culture, that's a really important point to consider. And the final element of Enterprise Mobility Suite that I want to touch on today is advanced threat analytics. So this is a really fascinating piece of technology. So the three that we've just covered, Azure AD Premium, Intune, and Rights Management Services, are all public cloud services delivered by Microsoft, leveraging the power of Azure. Now, Advanced Threat Analytics is an on-premises piece of technology. As I said, we made it through an acquisition of an Israeli security firm in early 2015, and we've decided to bring that into the Enterprise Mobility Suite to really deliver that full, comprehensive consistency of security at a user level. And there's some really important statistics that we want to highlight here to really drive this message home. So they reckon, on average, market analysis, etc. That an attacker will be within your network for upwards of 180, 200 days, so 6 months approximately. They'll be in your network, they'll go in via one set of user credentials, and then they'll sidestep their way around, leveraging things like pass the ticket, pass the hash attacks on user credentials to get access to what they need, and then they'll disappear with everything. That was pretty much what happened to Sony and to TalkTalk. People in the network for an extended period of time got everything they needed, and then eventually went out. And actually, as we just mentioned, that second point, the majority of those network intrusions are due to compromised user credentials. Now, this goes back to the very, very first point of Azure Active Directory, whereby we want to be able to have strong password policies, enable multi-factor authentication. So even if someone gets your password, they actually have to have your mobile phone. And not only do they have to have your mobile phone, but when they answer the phone call that MFA will phone down, you have to enter another PIN. So not only do they have to know your password, they have to have your phone and they have to have a PIN. And there's obviously different ways of setting that up, but we're really looking to protect those credentials because it does have such a massive, massive impact. And they reckon in America the most common password is password 123. So you can see where this starts to become a massive, massive issue for a lot of people. And actually, I would encourage. I don't have it with me today because it'd be quite difficult to show. But I would encourage any of you to go onto YouTube and search for Jimmy Kimmel password, and it's a fantastic sketch that they do where they take a team out onto the Hollywood Boulevard and they just start asking people about their password security. They're saying there's a big issue in America right now, we need to try and fix it, so we want to advise you on how strong your password is. And they can very, very simply get to a number of people. Some great examples. Someone gives up the fact that it's their dog's name followed by their birthday, just through to a couple of simple questions that they get asked, which is obviously a big issue. And the numbers on the right really, really do speak for themselves. There's a huge cost to cybercrime. Actually, there's a couple of insurance providers who are now starting to deliver that insurance policies against cybercrime, because it is a massive thing. Companies are being attacked left, right, and center every single day. Big brands, Twitter accounts, etc. And the fact that we do essentially have professional hackers, it's quite a scary thing. And it can cost a huge amount of money, not just necessarily through share price reductions, etc. when these things come up, but also just brand reputation, which is almost irreparable. So this is really, really important that we can start to get this. And actually, the one thing that I would often ask to people in this scenario is, it's all right that we're sitting here today taking in this content, but would you know right now, this second, if there was someone within your network taking stuff from you, accessing resources that they shouldn't be getting access to? Would you know? And this is really where advanced threat analytics comes in. Simple comparison we can make is kind of the tools that credit card companies use. So for example, if I get a phone call in 10 minutes time from American Express that says, Andy, someone's trying to buy like a $5,000 bag in Peru, is this you? I can say, yeah, it's not me. I'm in Watford today, so yeah, if you could please cancel that transaction and maybe cancel my card as well, that would be brilliant. So it's that similar principle. It's around kind of identifying those advanced security attacks, those hackers, and what they're doing before they actually cause damage, get the information and get out and kind of destroy your brand. And there's really two key areas here that we focus on. So naturally, we're looking at this as an on-premises thing. It's monitoring your devices and servers, monitoring your Active Directory traffic, your SIM data, etc. But there's two things. There's behavioral analytics, so it's profiling what we would just define as normal entity behavior versus abnormal entity behavior. So as an example, it will profile myself as a user. It will then profile me against the rest of my team. So if, for example, me and the rest of my team, bar one, say, log on at 9 a.m., we log off at 5 p.m., we access the same sort of resources, the same type of applications, then they might say, okay, that's kind of normal behavior. And then it could be that actually, say, Simon in my team is logging on at totally random hours and accessing a load of stuff from the American subsidiary SharePoint sites, etc. Now that could be considered as a malicious attack. That's not particularly normal, and especially compared to other people within the UK subsidiary. So it will profile the user versus their team, but it will then profile teams versus other teams, country versus country, etc. And actually, what you could go in, that will alert up, and you could then say, well, actually, Simon is just working with the US subsidiary, so he's on a different time zone. So you can kind of show that out as a false positive, but it will still give you that alert. And the second piece is the forensics for known attacks and issues. So Microsoft, as a huge IT organization, the same with all of us, get attacked on a consistent basis. We've learned a huge amount about IT security, the types of techniques that hackers are using. We do have people kind of monitoring the black market, in essences, to show whether see whether people's credentials have been leaked or being sold, etc. So we've got a huge play, and those of you that are close to Microsoft will know the acquisitions that we're making are all security ones at the moment. The new Enterprise E5 suite for Office 365, a huge focus on security, and Enterprise Mobility Suite really is the catalyst to all of those things moving forward, and new functionality coming in all of the time. Now, the forensics for known issues, if you plug this in, it essentially uses port mirroring, so it will remain invisible to your attackers, and it's agentless as well. So it will be truly invisible to your attackers. They won't know what's going on, and they won't know they're being monitored. But we can start to give you alerts from pretty much the first second that that's plugged in to your network, or mirroring your network and your traffic. So because we have the information, we have the knowledge, so we can then go and start to do that. Now, the behavioral analytics piece leverages machine learning. Probably takes about 3 weeks to get those insights and do that profiling, but once that's done, you can then start to bring those two together and effectively start to detect those suspicious user activities as well as the known attacks and issues. And actually, the real differentiator about ATA is that it is pretty much the only product out in market that takes both of those. It takes that behavioral analytics piece as well as the known attacks piece. And other crucial things to consider. It's about adapting quicker than your enemies. So they are using incredibly complicated hacking techniques. They're gaining access to your credentials. You need to start to be able to detect threats faster than them. And there's no need to create the rules or policies. Don't need to deploy agents or loads of security reporting, etc. It has the machine learning and the intelligence to start to surface that up to you. And from a consumption of that information and how we're going to move forward and actually do something with that. There's a great simple attack timeline, which I'll actually show you on this next slide here. You can kind of see it will say, for example, okay, there was potential identity theft using a pass to hash attack, and it will tell you which client PC it came from, which domain controller it was attempting to authenticate against, and then you can go in and start to take action. And as you can see there, a couple of quite a strong malicious attacks that we're kind of monitoring for: pass the ticket, pass the hash, skeleton key malware, which I believe is a pretty. I'm not an expert in malware and stuff, but I hear that's a nasty one. And to caveat, this is an alert tool, so this won't identify that attacker and kind of just suddenly remove all their access, etc. We would hope that you guys have policies and protocols, procedures in place to mitigate this kind of stuff happening. And actually, once you identify something's gone wrong, it could be changing the password, locking that user out entirely, re-imaging a machine, whatever it is. You can have access to that, but that's something that you would kind of do. So that kind of takes us to the end of EMS. We've obviously got loads of UK customers, loads of referenceability. I'd encourage you to visit the Enterprise Mobility Suite website. You can get details on pricing. I haven't put anything in here just because depending on the type of licensing program you wish to go through, whether it was EA, MPSA, available via the Cloud Solution Provider program, that will kind of depend on what you go for. But an extremely cost-effective solution, and as a bundle of products, very, very effective. So one thing I wanted to very quickly touch on before we can close up and maybe open up for some questions is around some new additions and roadmaps. So earlier when I spoke about that breadth of offerings, I spoke about the Microsoft Cloud App Security functionality. So this is literally a week old, and when I say a week old, a week since general availability. It's based on our acquisition of a company called Adalom, again out of Israel. And it really serves as a cloud access security broker for Microsoft. So it really it really plays very, very nicely on the Azure Active Directory Premium play, and obviously enabling protection of SaaS applications. And it really is there to protect your cloud applications. And especially a huge, vast variety of them. We know there's thousands out there that you could be using. So there's some key things here. The first one is around discovery. So this is about extending the functionality that's in Azure Active Directory Premium and gaining complete visibility and context for the cloud usage in your organization, and actually fully monitoring and getting to grips with what the shadow IT scenario is in your business without requiring agents. Looking at data control. So looking at shaping your cloud environment with granular controls, policy setting, data sharing, DLP, etc. And then obviously preventing those threats. Identifying high risk usage. So we kind of have used or Adlom have in the past used a strong risk setting algorithm where we kind of monitor market analysis, all sorts of different points. I think 50 different factors that we take into account to provide you with a risk score of using that SaaS application, for example, and how they fit in with other ones. And around that discovery piece, we're looking at picking up shadow IT, and this kind of touches on some of the things I've just spoken about. Over 13,000 cloud apps in use. And you can identify users, which IP addresses they're coming from, the top apps, the top users, what type of content's going through them. And again, taking some of that, replicating some of that functionality that sits within advanced threat analytics on premises and taking that up into your cloud application. So monitoring, anomalous activity within SaaS applications, identifying bizarre stuff that's going on, maybe compromised user credentials. And I'm just going to quickly show you some of the bits of the portal. So for the Discover piece, you can see here, the number of applications in your business. So potentially there's 31 apps being used all up. 15 of those you've sanctioned, potentially have enabled single sign-on to and are managing via AD Premium. And then there's 16 apps that are others. You can see there YouTube is one of them. You might have Box, amongst other things in there. And actually at first, in order to do this in that discovery piece, you just take network logs, and you can upload a sample of that log, into the Cloud App Security tool, which then starts to give you that information as to what people are accessing, and you can then start to configure automatic ones as it goes later. Then you can connect apps very, very easily. So we've got special kind of app API connectors, especially for the top apps, so the likes of AWS, Google, Salesforce, Box, who are really on board with this. And just to point out, this is not a new technology. It's new for Microsoft, but this is an established piece of kit that's been around for a while now, just under a different name. We can then start to investigate, look at the documents that are being kind of shared by which owners, start to gain control. So kind of looking at, do we want to kind of block access to that? If, say, in our business, Dropbox is just an absolute no-go. So we're just going to block access to Dropbox, and we can start to then migrate users to say, well, if you're using Dropbox, we actually want you to use OneDrive for Business because we know that's secure, and you can start to move them over there. And again, it will deliver alerts for suspicious activity. It could be, for example, someone's migrating a couple of terabytes worth of documentation out of their Office 365 and putting it into Google Drive or to Dropbox, and that's immediately going to throw up a big security threat. So obviously we can start to look at that. It's very complementary to both Office 365 and to EMS. So for EMS, naturally it plays on that application piece. And with 365, actually with the E5 SKU, some of this functionality is going to come in specifically for 365 under E5 as well. And that's going to come over the next kind of couple of months. So around Cloud App Security, it is kind of very, very recently launched. So there's still some technical details that we're waiting on. We've got lots of internal readiness, etc., to go through that. But as a customer, I would encourage you to go out to the Cloud App Security website. Request a demo. Check out some of the technical data sheets. Check out an overview and a kind of a more substantial demo than we'll do today. But it's a great tool. It is provisioned separately, so it's a separate product. I think it's $5 per user per month outside of 365 and outside of Enterprise Mobility Suites. But if software as a service application delivery is a key part of your business moving forward, it's something that I'd strongly encourage you looking at, regardless of whether your cloud strategy is Microsoft or not. And two final things I wanted to quickly touch on is when we mentioned in the Azure Active Directory Premium scenarios. There was connecting with business partners and then connecting with consumers. So these are two bits of technology in Active Directory Premium in Azure that are both in public preview. So B2B collaboration is really around sharing access to corporate applications, etc., without requiring complex federation per partner on premises. So you don't need to require any more really complicated ADFS infrastructure federating at a partner level. You might have thousands of partners that you need to federate with, and that becomes a real issue. It's very, very simple. Partners use their own credentials to access your organization. There's no worry about external directories. You can control the partner access to your app assignments, the group membership that they're in, any custom attributes you might want to start to do. They're very, very easy to get it up and running very, very quickly. So again, doing bulk invites. Those who already have Azure Active Directory, very, very simple. They just sign in to accept the invitation. Those who don't use Azure Active Directory, they just sign up with their credentials, and they get an Azure AD account and can then start to access that. Kodak have started to use it, and again, they have to collaborate with a huge number of partners, and it massively reduces the cost of IT infrastructure that you potentially need, sometimes for some extremely simple collaboration requirements. So again, that's something that's in public preview, will become in general availability hopefully later this year, but definitely worth having a look at if it interests you. And B2C is the other one. So very, very simply, this is extremely similar to the type of technologies that you see. Those of you who've got Netflix and potentially have signed up with your Facebook credentials, or potentially same things like Candy Crush, you sign in with your Facebook credentials. That takes your first name, last name, email address as the sign up, stuff that you're looking to do. And Real Madrid have used this. So again, public preview, but they've been using it in collaboration with our Microsoft Services team to build their modern application for their 450 million fans. It gives them a really simple identity model. Superior economics in the sense that we're talking fractions of a penny per authentication. So again, all cloud-based, making it extremely simple, and going across platform, cross applications, and enabling the likes of Microsoft accounts, Facebook login.